and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. And if you will allow me, I shall copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. Pray go on, Ernest. I delight in taking from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more. Pray don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first laid my eyes upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense now, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
No, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Why, of course, you silly boy. We have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, when dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very bad and wicked, you, of course, formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, anyone who's much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something about him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with you.
Darling. Well, when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle, I decided to accept you at this spot. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name. And this is the bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you have wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It is the excuse I have always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But, my own sweet Cecily, I haven't written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, no! That would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on the 22nd of March last. You may read the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
But it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls quite naturally. Does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I am glad to hear it.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you?
No, I don't think I could possibly break it off now that I have actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling. But it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in the name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you cannot love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any other name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if I was called Algy, couldn't you love me?
I might admire you, Ernest. I might respect your character. But I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him on a most important christening. I mean on a most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged for the last 3 months, and I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for a long period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I shall be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax had called for Mr. Earnest on very important business, she states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing just headed in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing should be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in the country. I don't like women who are associated with philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax, ma'am.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
If you wish.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
With pleasure.
Then that is all quite settled then, is it not?
I hope so.
I suppose this would be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolen. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
No, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
No, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange he never mentioned to me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. However, I'm not sure that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I have met you. But now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a desire that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
They do. I believe that when one ever has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies us with many more painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me he had a brother.
No, I am sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time now.
That accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load off my mind. I was growing almost anxious. Of course, you're quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is a guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The fact will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You are under some strange mistake, dear Gwendolen. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, darling Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any physical or mental anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If my poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I shall never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I leave the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of a hill quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who's anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
That is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it very much just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my character. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
The moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest.
Gwendolyn?
My own Ernest.
Darling.
A moment. May I ask you if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not. Who could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is my guardian, Mr. Jack Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This, Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. To Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh, are you really called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really Jack?
I could deny it if I liked. And I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is Jack. It's been Jack for years.
A gross deception has been practiced over both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? Since we are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth, but in fact it is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. I really have quite very little experience at all about this situation, but however, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Not even of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, darling Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
Yes, it is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in now, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is. The most wonderful bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you certainly no right to be bunburying here.
Well, that's absurd. One has the right to bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that.
Serious bunburyist, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunburying. What on earth you're serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. But everything I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear up to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your ever marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner, now can I? The butter would probably get all over my cuffs.
Well, what are you doing at the present moment, then?
At the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there is certainly no reason for you to be eating them in that unnecessary manner.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who intimately knows me will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. I was eating muffins because I was unhappy. Besides, I really do like those muffins.
I suppose a man made his own muffins in his own garden.
Yes, but you said it was perfectly heartless to eat them.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
I can't go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, well, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened under the name of Earnest at 5:45.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements for Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30 myself, and I naturally will be taking the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We cannot both be christened Ernest. It is absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is certainly no evidence of my ever being christened before. I should think it extremely probable I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have already been christened.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are haven't been too sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You could have hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was nearly carried off in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know. I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that is nonsense. You're never talking anything but nonsense.
Jack, you are at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 3 left.
But I hate tea cake.
Well, why on earth do you allow them to be served up for your guests, then? What ideas do you have on hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Well, I haven't quite finished my tea yet. Besides, there are still a few muffins left.
Ah.
To the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They are looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That is very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It is the only thing to do now.
After you, dear boy. No, after you. No, you go first. I'm not really very good at the habits. Much better there. Well, we'll see. One, two, and... The western wind is blowing fair across the dark Aegean Sea, and at the secret marble stair, my Tyrian galley waits for thee. Come down, the purple sail is spread, the watchman sleeps within the town. Oh, leave thy lily-flowered bed, oh, lady mine, come down, come down, lady, come down, come down, lady, come down, oh, lady, come down.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Definitely not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Your common sense is invaluable, Gwendolen. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
So that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
His answer seems quite satisfactory to me.
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style and not sincerity is a vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you could come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject. I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Your explanations seem to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. His seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am quite satisfied with what Mr. Moncrief has said. His voice alone seems to inspire absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes, I mean no.
True. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak together?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names.
Is that all?
But we are to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are prepared to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, by my daughter's sudden flight, by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father, as I'm glad to say, under the impression that she's attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I've never undeceived him on any question. I consider it wrong. But of course, you will clearly understand, sir, that all communications between yourself and my daughter will cease from this moment. On this point, indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Aunt Augusta.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury's somewhere else at the present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he a victim of the revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was much interested in social legislation. If so, he's well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean to say. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he made up his mind in the last to some definite course of action and acted under the proper medical advice of his doctors. And now that Mr. Bunbury is no more, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon seems to be holding in the most peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married.
I don't know whether there's anything particularly interesting in the air of this part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that seem to go on seems to me to be considerably above average that statistics has laid down for our guidance. Some preliminary inquiries on my part will not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any larger railway stations in London? I merely asked for information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Jervas Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran Fifeshire, North Block.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. Three addresses always inspires confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I've known some strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, a firm with the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally seen at dinner parties. So far, I'm satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be glad to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the English and the German variety.
Ah, nice out-of-bit incident, I see. Though perhaps too exciting for a young girl. I'm not in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. You shall accompany me. Mr. Worthing, as a part of form, may I ask you if Miss Cardew has any fortune left?
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to be a very attractive lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any solid qualities. Any qualities that last and improve with time. I regret to say we live in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear child. Dear child, your dress is sadly simple and your hair is almost as nature might have left it. But all that can be soon altered. A thoroughly experienced French maid has a marvelous effect in a brief space of time. I remember recommending one to Lady Lansing, and within 3 months her own husband didn't recognize her.
And in 6 months, nobody did.
Kindly turn around, dear. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn, and at present it is worn very high. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl I've ever known, and I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Do not speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who cannot get into it do that. My dear child, you do know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend on. I do not believe in mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. Of course, I didn't allow that to stand in my way. I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta from the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I suppose the wedding must occur as soon as possible.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I'm not in favor of long engagements. It gives people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, and that is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. Miss Cardew is my ward, and she cannot marry without my consent till she comes of age. That consent I decline to give.
Upon what grounds? Algernon is extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously, an eligible young man. He looks nothing, but he is everything. What more can one desire?
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I really fear there can be no doubt about the matter at all. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier Jouet, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his... Thank you, Elaine. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware right from the start that I have no brother Ernest, that I never had a brother Ernest, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of having one in the future. I distinctly told him this yesterday afternoon.
After careful consideration, Mr. Worthing, I've decided to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely kind of you. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come, dear. Come here, dear child. How old are you?
I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 at evening parties.
You're perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I suppose your guardian's consent is of no importance.
I beg your pardon, Aunt Augusta, but I have to interrupt you again. You see, under the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women who have, of their free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is a point in instance. According to my knowledge, she's been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which is many years ago.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
You know I could, Cecily.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait for that long. I hate waiting for anyone, even for 5 minutes. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even for marriage, is quite out of the question.
Then, my dear Cecily, what is to be done?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew positively states that she cannot wait until she's 35, a remark which I'm bound to say shows somewhat an impatient nature. I beg you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You're quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear Gwendolen, we've already missed 5 trains, if not 6. To miss more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you from being baptized. If Lord Bracknell found out that this is the way you were wasting away your time and money, he would be very displeased.
I too understand that there will be no christenings at all this afternoon.
I don't think that as things are now, it is of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I've completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, since your present mood seems peculiarly secular, I shall return to the church at once. Indeed, I've been told that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This might be of grave importance to me and Lord Bracknell. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, at all connected to education?
Oh, she's the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same woman. What position does she hold in your household?
I'm a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I want her to be sent immediately.
Oh, she approaches.
I was told you were waiting for me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting there for you for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Miss Prism. Prism, 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in charge of a preambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. After the thorough investigations by the Metropolitan Police, the preambulator was discovered at midnight in a back corner in Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a more than usually revolting sentimentality. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. Indeed, I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory. I had prepared, as usual, to take the baby out in its bassinet for a stroll. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place a manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I shall never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
Where did you deposit that handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom in one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
But I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, you will wait for me here.
If you're not too long, I will wait here all my life.
Lady Bracknell, what do you think this means?
I need hardly to suspect if Dr. Chasuble. I'm also aware that the family is of highest position. Strange coincidences are hard to suppose to occur, when not considered the king.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
God, he seems to have a very emotional nature.
This noise is very distressing. It sounds like he's having an argument. And I do not like arguments. They're always so vulgar and often so convincing.
Noise has stopped now.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, I do believe it is. Yes, indeed. Here is the injury it received during an upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus, an incident which occurred in happier and younger days. And here is a stain from an explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock, I had my initials engraved. I remember I'd done that when I was in an especially extravagant mood. Yes, I do believe this is my handbag. I'm delighted to have it back. It has been such a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed inside it.
What?
Yes, Mother.
I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, I believe there's been some error. There is a lady who can tell you who you really are.
I hate to seem inquisitive, Lady Bracknell, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
The news I have to give to you is not altogether pleasing. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? I knew I had a brother. Oh, no. I always said I had a brother. Oh, no. Oh, God. Algy, you... Cecily, how could you have ever doubted I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate young brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate young brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate young brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Not till today, old boy, I admit. However, I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name, now that you have become someone else?
Heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism deposited me in that handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christenings, had been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. And that is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot recollect what the general's Christian name was, but I'm aware that he did have one. He was a very eccentric man, you see. Of course, that was caused by indigestion, Indian climate, and things of that sort.
Algie, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The general was a man of peace, except in his domestic life, of course. But yes, I do know that his names would be in the army lists.
Oh, the army lists of the last 40 periods are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Military generals. Maxbaum, Magley, what ghastly names they have. Maxbaum, Magley, Moncrief. Lieutenant Colonel, Captain 1869, Lieutenant Colonel again, Captain 1864. Christian names, Ernest John. I had always told you my name was Ernest, didn't I, Gwendolyn? Well, it naturally is Ernest. I mean, really, this time.
Ernest! My own Ernest! I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it's a terrible thing for a man to find out that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you're sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
John Moncrief. My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, now realize for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Before I introduce the cast and crew to you, I'd like to brief you a little upon our work. The last 3 productions were Bread Breakfast Broadway, What Dreams Are Made Of, and Nitya Yatra, which enabled us to raise over 2 lakh rupees. With the money so raised, Jeunesse founded the construction of basic infrastructure in the government school of Somajigura. We not only got the painting and the cupboards built, but also bought all the books at the end of the year. I'd like to thank our sponsors, our main sponsors, Kitty Group of Companies, our associative sponsors, APTDC, and our media sponsors, Avantgarde Life magazine. Sorry. Now coming up to the cast and crew. Rahul as Algie. Nihar as Jack. Sampada, Lady Bracknell. Raisa as Gwendolyn. Shantani as Miss Prism. Prashant as Dr. Chasuble. And Ravi Kundalia as Lane and Merriman. Nidhi Bala Subramaniam as Cecily. Moving on to the crew, without which we would not have been able to do what we did today. Light, Ishan Dodiwala. Sound, Vaishali Bhate. Our set designer, Mehjabeen. Our costume assistants, Shreya and Pooja. Could we please have you on stage? Ishan, Vaishali. Set assistants, Ranjit, Rahul, Kaushal. Props assistant, Anandita and Abha. We'd also like to thank Ananta Ahuja for our last-minute alterations. Our director, Sampada. Assistant director, Akshay. And me, the production manager. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you have a safe ride home. Good night.
Akshay! Can you please put Nihar's and Rahul's mic on, please?
Mic's on.
No.
Go, 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 Nihar!
Wait!
Nihar!
Nihar? Impromptu, of course. Rahul's mic and his mic, please.
Rahul and Nihar's mic.
Come on, guys.
That's 1 and 2.
How cool is it seeing two guys in suits beatbox? No, you bring it. No, just start something. Come on, put your mic there.
My dear fellow.
Thank you. You go.